What is going on, squad? Welcome back to another video and another episode of our monthly favourites that we absolutely do not do every month, and it's more like once a quarter, where I go over one thing in the world of training, one thing in the world of nutrition, and one thing in the world of recovery that I've been messing around with and is working for me right now. Hence my inclination to share it with you absolute alphas. Let's go. Starting off with nutrition then, I have been extremely outspoken over the last couple of years about the fact that I favour a low carb diet. I believe it helps with keeping my energy levels even and ambient through the day. And most notably, it's good for your old noggin. It's been good for my attention, my focus, my cognition, and my cerebral horsepower. Whereas sometimes when we get brain foggy, we can't speak good, and that's no good for you or me or us, right? That being said, the thing I have actually changed recently is that I have increased my carb intake. My training volume has increased a little bit, and I was just finding that there were some things in the gym that I just couldn't do. Any kind of steady state work was kind of okay. Even certain interval exposures were kind of okay when I was super low carb. And when I say super low carb, I was having probably around about 125 grams of carbs a day. But considering I was eating about 3,000 calories a day, that ain't much. So I could kind of get away with steady state work. I could kind of even get away with strength stuff. But the thing that I just felt completely flipping incapable of doing was anything that was explosive. Because I do a lot of primers and I still try to include some power work in my program now. I think it's good for my maximum strength levels. I think it's really good for my physique. I just felt as though there was a gear that my body had that I just couldn't flip and tap into. Spoke to a couple of people about it and they said, why don't you just try increasing your carbohydrate intake? I did this in two ways. Number one, I increased my overall weekly carb intake by the fact that I normally break my fast at kind of 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, with about 500 grams of beef and 6 eggs. And the only carb inclusion of that meal where I would break my fast is that I would have said beef and eggs in a couple of tiny little gluten-free wraps. So the first way that I've increased my carbs is every other day is that I have a little bit more carbs in that first meal, usually half a packet of Tilda or Uncle Ben's rice. The second way that I did it is just by allowing myself to have some simple sugars before I indulged in a session that might be a little bit more explosive. This could range from a sugary snack or an energy drink. I've started drinking a couple of Monsters recently. I'm actually intrigued to see what I think of that. Or it could literally be a little bit of hot water in a glass, an absolute shit ton of honey, stir it around and then neck that. So every other lunchtime, have some rice with my lunch, and a couple of times a week, have something sweet, basically have some simple sugars before I train on some of my more explosive sessions. My performance in the gym has definitely increased. Like, I've got used to a certain amount of training volume that I kind of self-program now. And for the first time in a long time, I'm finishing that program definitely feeling as though I've got more in the tank. So what used to leave me completely ball bagged now leaves me in a position where I'm appropriately worked, but I could probably squeeze out a few more sets if I needed to. And in regards to the cognition, it hasn't really sacrificed it at all, which is absolutely amazing. I still feel as sharp. Not sure where I'll finally land on this. Again, I always say there are people with PhDs on this subject that can't even agree on the conclusion of the same fucking research, so we're never gonna know. But at the moment, I feel pretty good, so I think I'm gonna keep doing it. Number two, training. The thing that is working for me that is kind of new at the moment is I'm actually starting to do a little bit of cardio, kind of 15 or 20 minutes worth of like interval work, worth of good quality conditioning stuff at the beginning of my strength session instead of at the end. Lifting weights is the thing that realistically I want to do. So it's almost like getting nice and sweaty, makes me feel super flipping warm and limber by the time I get to the lifting session. Little bit of pre-fatigue in some of the tissues, but I don't really think that's gonna negatively affect me. But it's like a buy-in. It's like I have to bloody earn the right to do the good quality, fun weightlifting stuff that I wanna do. And there are 1,000,001 different ways that I can procrastinate and convince myself why it's best to, you know, cut the head off the cardio stuff today, not bother with it because I've got to go back home and do X. But 15 to 20 minutes, if I keep myself accountable to doing that at the beginning, the quality of that work is a lot better. I really make sure I don't just get it done. I do kind of get into it. My performance in that's a little bit more fresh. And then my performance in the lifting side is always going to be high because that's the stuff that I most enjoy doing. Just always trying to find ways to keep myself honest, and front loading the conditioning stuff at the beginning is working well for me right now. And thirdly, the recovery hack. As you guys will all know, I'm a massive fan of cold water immersion. Cold shower every morning, I think it's incredibly good for you. However, at the end of a lifting session, we don't want cold, we want heat, because we want that inflammatory response. Overall, we want to decrease inflammation, but having that super acute inflammation at the end of a gym session is something that we want to maintain. But what I've actually been doing in the shower after sessions recently, the thing that I'm allowed to tell you about anyway, is temperature cycling. So I have a little bit of hot, and then a little bit cold, then a little bit hot, and then a little bit cold. And what that does is it causes this kind of oscillation of vascular shunting. So you have a hot shower and basically your limbs just get flooded with blood, which is what we want. And then I have a cold shower and have as much cold water on my chest, on my neck, on my head, on my back as possible to bring all the blood internally, and then heat, and again, it just flushes to the outside. And that can be a really, really healthy process. Just a couple of minutes, but the only caveat on this to make sure that we do it properly is to ensure that you finish on hot. So there we go, guys. Number one, ambiently increasing carbohydrates. It was the lack of explosive dynamic strength and power that caused me to investigate a way that I can flip and solve that problem. 3 or 4 weeks in, it's working for me so far. Number two, front loading a little bit of conditioning work at the beginning of the session to basically have it as a buy-in to get to the weights, if the weight stuff is the stuff that you prefer doing. And number three, temperature cycling in the shower after to really make sure that you harness the power and effectiveness of those thermic stresses, but just ensure that you finish on heat. My monthly/quarterly favorites, guys. Hope you did enjoy. If you have not yet done so, please do subscribe. Any questions or anything, put it down in the comment section below. Please do smash that like button. It takes you 2 seconds. It's incredibly good for the growth of me and the channel. And as always, squad, stay strong, stay healthy, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next video.